Come now, you rich people, weep and wail for the miseries that are coming to you. Your riches have rotted, and your clothes are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have rusted, and the rust will be evidence against you, and it will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up treasure for the last days. Listen, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, cry out, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on earth in luxury and in pleasure. You have fattened your hearts to the day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous one who does not resist you. When I sit down and I think about the most evil rich people in the world, which thankfully I don't do very often, but when I do, I most often find myself thinking about people who live extravagant lives. We have TV shows dedicated to extravagance and wealth. There was a show when I was younger called MTV Cribs, and it might even still be on, I don't know, which basically equated to going through a celebrity's house and showing just how much they had spent on it and how much better it was than your house. I also remember another show where they just went and looked at celebrities' cars, how expensive they are, how fast they are, how unnecessary they are. We have an unhealthy obsession with wealth and luxury in the United States. But as much as we may hate that obsession, at least those wealthy people are using their money. By spending that money, someone got a paycheck. Be it contractors, or factory workers, or car salesmen, somebody got paid by the extravagance of these people. Somebody's table had food. That image of wealth isn't the image that is really helpful in understanding James' message in this passage. In that case, the money isn't rotting away. Now, there is obviously way too much money, absolutely. But it isn't just building and building and building without purpose. A better image of this passage would be a man like Scrooge, a wealthy man who was just way too cheap to pay his workers and expected to get everything for free. His wealth gave him power, and he abused that power to hoard more wealth. His money does absolutely no good. His riches help no one. And before his experience with the ghosts, he is lined up to collect all this wealth and then die, only to learn that you can't take it with you. It may seem far-fetched in our world until you hear stories like the family who were cleaning out their grandfather's house and noticed that he had just an inordinate amount of meat in the freezer. Only when they took one of the packages out, it was way too light to be meat. And so they opened it up, and they found thousands of dollars in cash. And that was every meat package. And as they went through the house, they found thousands of dollars in books and other hiding places around the house. No one knew about this money. No one benefited from this money. And the grandfather wasn't able to take it with him in death. That is the image of wealth we should be looking at with this passage. What I think we could first think about is the concept of our riches wasting away. Again, it is important for us not to think about the person who squanders, but the person who hoards and squirrels away. Wasting isn't caused by use or overuse, but by not using. I'm reminded of these ancient Japanese tea sets I've seen. Without regular use, the ceramic materials will slowly crumble and waste away. But with regular use, spilling and wiping, the tea sets remain beautiful. But I have an even better example and a more applicable example. Think about a car for a moment. What happens if you let the car sit for a couple weeks? Depending on the quality of gas and the weather, it might run a little bit rough, but it should be fine, especially if it's a newer car. A couple of months, it might chug a little bit and the gas might have started going bad. A couple of years, it's going to go something like this. Chug, 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 smoke, 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 sputter, 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 bang! Chug, 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 smoke, 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 stir, 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 stir. A couple of decades, well, you might as well resign yourself to rebuilding the engine, because it isn't going to run if you don't. But these examples aren't perfect, though, because gold and silver don't waste away like that. We have gold from King Tut's tomb. We have silver usable utensils from the founding fathers. We have the wealth of the dead, and it's still good. But even though on earth it may seem to last forever, even those things are temporary. Even plastic, inert and basically impossible to break down without fire or chemicals. Plastic like that will be around for thousands of years, is temporary. Nothing of this world is eternal like God. And nothing of this creation goes with us into the next world. When you really sit down and think about it, it really isn't surprising that so many people are so focused on this world and being comfortable now. It makes sense that this is what we see. This is what we know. This is tangible and sensible. Faith is unnecessary for us to see the results of building up wealth on earth and acquiring things and squirreling it all away for a rainy day. We know that if there isn't food on the table, we go hungry. And if the check doesn't clear for the mortgage, we lose our home. We know these things. These things are real for us. We can see them, and our minds have a very hard time of rationalizing that they are truly temporary. Even those things that we know are fleeting on earth can seem permanent and never-ending. It requires a giant leap of faith to work towards something that we can't see and is in a future we have no proof of. It requires a giant leap of faith to think about what a different being may want of us. It requires a giant leap to think of what you are doing has an effect on you after you are dead. But the things of this world do not. But it is even more than just God's will in eternity. We are given things on earth to do good. We have resources to do good. The vast call of the Gospels is to show love to all. And we have the resources so we can do that. But there are times that it requires giving up something that makes you more comfortable, that makes you happy, that gives you pleasure. Sometimes it requires making a real sacrifice to help someone else. Sometimes doing good requires you to give more of yourself than you realize you can. But that's why we're here, to live with one another, to care for and love one another. And we provide for others' needs at the sacrifice of our own selfish desires. We should be actually changing our desires to make the needs of others what we desire, and desire to help them. Now, what I want to make sure doesn't happen as we read this passage and think about it is to read it as condemning all those who have wealth. It would be really easy, and it might feel pretty good to read this and say it says that all the rich people are going to be condemned. But it really doesn't. As I said, the resources we are given to survive and to do good. And the more resources you have, the more good that you can do. I was in seminary and I was told a story about John Wesley, one of the founders of the Methodist Church. And I thought he would be a good role model to look at. When he started teaching at Oxford, his salary was £30 a year, and his expenses were £28 a year to live a very comfortable life. So he gave his remaining £2 to charity. His second year, his salary was doubled to £60, and his expenses were still £28 a year. So he gave £32 away. As he made more and more and more, his expenses went up very little. So he started giving more and more away. One year, he made £1,400, when a comfortable life still only cost him around £30. That year, he kept less than 3% of his income, and the rest went to needy people. Now, there is nothing wrong with building wealth, but that wealth needs to be used for good. There are examples today of people who do this very well. I know lots of people don't like him, but Bill Gates is an excellent example of this. He is currently the richest man in the world. Yet he and his wife have started a foundation that is so good at giving money to great causes that a lot of Silicon Valley companies don't even deal with their own charitable giving. They just give it to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation because they do a better job of using it. And Bill has a plan to give away the vast majority of his wealth before he dies. But there's an even better example. Recently, I learned of a man named Chuck Feeney, and he started a chain of duty-free stores in the 60s. And he had an estimated worth of about $7.5 billion. In secret, he started this foundation to give away hundreds of millions of dollars to multiple nonprofit organizations. And he quietly gave away his portion of this duty-free empire to the foundations so they could continue to give money away. By 2012, he had given away 6.2 of his $7.5 billion. By the end of next year, he will have given away most of his money and just kept enough to live on. Wealth is a resource, and it can do great things if we only let it do those great things. At the very core of this passage, it comes down to the difference between wants and needs. Most of the time when we read those two things, we see them in opposition of each other. But today, we can think about wants being in addition to our needs. If we are in a position where our needs are met, and then our wants have come into play, we have the resources left to fulfill some of our wants, what do we do? What we should want as Christians is to help. When we have the resources to help in a physical, real way, we should help in a physical, real way. When we have the things to help, we need to give those things so they can help. What we cannot do, what will kill our souls, is to become worried about acquiring wealth and keeping that wealth, and letting our riches overtake us. It is so easy to be worried about if there will be enough 10 years from now, that we just miss the opportunities to help now. We are here now, in this world today, and people need help today. And when we are gone, the wealth will not go with us. I don't have a long and complicated and profound way of saying what is so simple. If you have, give. Period. Now, there is nothing wrong with being comfortable and saving for the future and being responsible. But the resources we have are not just for us. they are to do good. Squandering and squirreling away are abuses of what we have been given and do damage to our souls. So in short, do good with what you have. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.